Hello, Jeff Feldman here with Ballen Brands, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about database management. Now, we work with a lot of clients with their database, their CRM, meaning their customer relation management system, and we specifically focus on Keep, or what used to be called Infusionsoft. It's a CRM, very powerful one. It allows us to do a lot of customizations, a lot of automation. But what happens is that the information that we're going to put into the system is really key, and that's with any system that you're going to be using. So I wanted to make a few recommendations on what to consider when we're compiling and configuring information that's going into a CRM. So what I have here is I have a sample spreadsheet, and this is all false information, obviously just to kind of populate some fields. And every industry is going to be a little bit different. I'm giving you kind of the first primary that I think works with just about any industry, no matter what business you're in, who you're keeping in touch with. And then, of course, there's going to be additional ones for different types of businesses that we'll have, and I have those over here as well. But I'm just going to run through these and make a few recommendations on how to manage your information, and if you're going to switch to another CRM, or if you're going to start using a CRM for the first time, and we have a list of contacts, then really how to clean this up and make it as effective as possible. All right, so jumping into here, we've got obviously our first name and last name. We do recommend having those split up. Most CRMs accommodate the separate first name, last name, and that's because if we're going to use any kind of automation and we're going to use things like merge fields, then having just a single name fields where the full name, like John Doe, is in one field, we're not going to get the same result like we would if we're going to send out an email. It would say, "Hi, John Doe," which a lot of times that's a little too formal. We're not trying to be, that specific first name and last name. So we do recommend having first name, last name split up as part of the database setup, assuming, of course, that your database or your CRM that you're working with does have those separated. Most that we work with do, so I do recommend having it in that format. Next, we're going to have email and phone number. So obviously, email and phone number are critical. A lot of systems, again, treat these fields differently. There are some systems that have email 1, 2, 3, 4, and then phone 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of them have home phone, cell phone, work phone. We recommend really just kind of singling in on a primary contact. So a primary email and a primary phone number. Yes, you may have secondary information, which is fantastic. You can add that in the other fields. But whether it's their home phone, cell phone, work phone, we do recommend that you're choosing which one you put in first. So if you have a system that has mobile phone versus work phone and home phone instead of just phone 1, phone 2, phone 3, then you're going to want to just pick one and make that your primary. Ideally, again, you'll have a value in the same phone field. So let's say it is actually a work phone. We would still even put it in the mobile phone category if they were broken up for us in the CRM, because when we do an export or when we're trying to contact or how we're displaying it on the screen, we want that phone number to still show the same way that all the rest of the phone numbers do, or in the same spot. So I know that gets a little confusing sometimes, but ideally your CRM is going to have more of a email 1, phone 1, email 2, phone 2, or a primary phone and secondary phone, or a primary email, secondary email. Hopefully it's set up more that way so that it's a little more clear, and it doesn't matter as much if it's a work phone or a home phone or a cell phone. It's basically just the phone number you're supposed to call when you jump into the CRM and you got to make a phone call to them. All right, so then we have category. So category could be called tags. It could be called buckets. A lot of different systems, again, handle those differently. And the idea with category is just a way to classify who they are. Now, in CRMs that we utilize, we actually use the category more for like what kind of automation they're going to be on. So, for example, if they're a past client, let's say in real estate, they're a buyer, well, then I might have them on a particular automation. So I have them on the past client automation where I'm following up with them and keeping in touch. And then I might reach out to all of my previous buyers for a particular reason. So I want to segment them that way in this particular case. So So some of those, again, like ideas of what categories or segments we might have is going to be past client, customer, maybe is the better term if you don't call them clients. SOI would be like sphere of influence or people something like that. And then potential customer, for example. So this is just a way for us to kind of keep track of what they are. So ideally, you're not going to cross categories. And what I mean by that is like you wouldn't have a potential customer and a customer, right? Like they're either a customer or they're a potential customer. Now, with that being said, if you have a potential customer campaign that you have set up doing automation, someone could be a past client, for example, and then also be a potential customer again. Maybe that someone, again, in real estate, if we sold them a house 5 years ago and now they're asking the value of their home, well, they are a past client and a seller, but maybe we're going to mark them as a potential customer because we want to make sure that they're getting our current, more frequent messages sent to them. So just an idea really again of like how to classify people. So sometimes they do cross, but that would be if they're going to be on both automations. So I would have them as a potential customer, like maybe I'm doing a potential customer party or a gathering or something. So I want to invite them to that, but they're also still going to reach out to them every 6 weeks or so just as a past client just to kind of keep in touch. So they might be on both campaigns. But that's the idea with the categories. Basically, who or how we're going to communicate with them or touch them or what kind of campaigns we'd have them on. Of course, lead source is very important. It's always good to have an idea of where people come from. If they came in through the website, this again, SOI would be like sphere of influence. Maybe you can call that word of mouth if that's a more familiar term for you. Facebook, Instagram, they're a past customer. And again, this to make the distinction, this means they came from a past customer. So a customer, if the lead source is past customer, we're not saying that they are a past customer. We're saying that they were referred by a past customer, just as an example. So sometimes that gets a little confusing for people. We have categories and we have lead sources. When you use tags and categories for your lead source names, you see how that can kind of cross. That can get a little confusing. So I can have a past client or past customer as the category because that's what they are, but I can also have as a lead source that they were referred by a past customer. So again, how we distinguish that, there's a little bit of clarity we want to make there with the team, whatever team you're working with or who else is in the database. You just want to define what that means for you and just stick with a consistent rhythm. It is also important to know who referred them. So if it was, in this case, let's say past customer, and then I'll say Jane Doe on this one, for example. So not only were they referred by a past customer, but I'm saying it was Jane Doe's who referred them. So that's also very important, of course, because we want to keep track of who's sending us the business, who we should be paying attention to, maybe who we should be thanking, after we do get the deal. But it is always a good idea to know, who referred them. Again, in the real estate world, it could be an agent referral from another market. It could be a vendor referral, like if we work with different vendors and they send us a referral. So it's good to just kind of have that identified in the database. And then on a little personal note, having the birthday and anniversary, something like that. The anniversary could be a transaction anniversary, so when they became a customer, or it could be an actual, wedding anniversary. We do find it's a little tougher to keep track of the wedding anniversary, so we don't necessarily lead with that one in most of the clients that we work with, because relationships change, unfortunately. It is just a part of life, and so trying to keep track of that is a little more difficult than keeping track of the fact that they actually did a deal with you or they bought something from you on this particular date. So the idea with this again is that there'd be some sort of campaign running or some sort of something that you're reaching out to them. Having their birthday just to have it in the database doesn't necessarily do much, but if you're going to use it because you're sending out birthday cards or you're calling and following up with birthdays, or you have an automation like we develop for you where it'll send them a text message the morning of their birthday to wish them happy birthday. Things like that, of course, would be, where that's appropriately used. So a little bit more on that personal level. And then lastly, if you're working with a team or on a team where you have multiple agents on your team or multiple employees dealing with customer sales representatives, however you might call them, it is good to know who it's assigned to. So some CRM platforms have an owner. So where you can, that's how it's assigned, is whoever owns that contact in the system. But a lot of agents and businesses that we work with don't have, each of their employees set up as a user in the system. So it could just be a way for the manager, the owner of the business to keep track of who they gave this information to, or who they gave this lead to, or who's responsible for the lead. So that might be a way too. So it might be a separate field, or you might just use a field that already exists in the CRM. All right, so now if we get a little more specific, let's say now those are kind of your basic business ones. So whether you're a handyman, or a real estate agent, or own a doctor's office, like these are like really your basics, like your simple kind of a bare minimum what we recommend having in the platform. Now, each individual industry, of course, that you work in would have different things too. So in the real estate, for example, we'd have, are they a buyer or a seller? Now, again, we've already identified over here, maybe under categories, that they're a buyer or seller, but is it a buy or a sell for the next potential, for example? I like to find out whether or not someone might refer me. So sometimes deals aren't as personable as others, especially in real estate. Some people are just looking to get the transaction done. They have no loyalty. They, to me as the agent. They don't necessarily, commit anything. Most of the people I work with become friends. I go to their home, new home parties and things like that. But not everybody works that way, right? So sometimes I just like to know who really should I be pursuing, and maybe who I should just leave alone because they just wanted to get the deal done and they've moved on and didn't give me their forwarding information or whatever it might be. So I like to have that as a separate field for myself. Local is another one, whether they're still local or not. So in real estate, of course, if I help someone sell a house, they might have moved to another place and another state, for example, and I'm not licensed in that state. And if I don't necessarily have like a personal relationship after everything's said and done, then I like to know, am I like, I don't want to send them the same kind of local, I'm not going to send them if I'm doing mailers, for example, to a client appreciation party, I don't want to send that to them in their new state, for example. So I like to know whether or not they're local or not, so I know how to communicate with them. I could also do, that as a tag or a category. I can put past client, buyer, local, or do it that way too. Either way, in my case, I just like to have it separate, but it could work the other way as well. And then lastly, potential business. So it's also good to kind of, score or assess whether or not you think this person would do business with you again, or again on the refer side, would they refer you business? So if they would refer me business, but they're not local, but maybe they had a lot of ties to the community, then I would consider that, yes, this is potential business. I still want to keep in touch with them the same way I would keep in touch with somebody else that I'm working with. Now, as I say that though, there's also different things. Like you could look at it as, is John Doe himself potential business? And in this case, it would be no, because he's not local. So he's not really potential business for me. Yes, we could do, agent referrals and things like that. But, in a different community, they meet different people. It's just not likely. So for me, I want to know who my potential business is, like who I should really be focusing on the most. Now, what's awesome is that, we develop automation. So I use a system, as I mentioned, Keep, for example, and we have automation that keeps in touch with people for us, because it does get a little overwhelming when I've got 100 past clients, and I've got, new people I'm meeting every day. I'm in the CrossFit community. I'm, go out to networking events. It's next to impossible to touch everybody, which is why, having a clean database is so important. Having 500 names and numbers and email addresses and just kind of hitting them all the same way isn't really going to be that effective. I'd rather have 50 people that I'm talking to this way and 150 people that I'm talking to that way, and that's what these systems allow us to do. But in order to do that, we need to know this information. If I don't have their email or phone number, then that's one more touch that I can't do for them. If I don't know if they're a past client or a buyer or a seller, I don't know how to communicate with them. If I don't know where the lead source came from, then I don't know, where to continue my marketing efforts, for example. So these are all things that we find is critical information. If you don't have it, you don't have it. I mean, that's all there is to it. It doesn't mean, ignore them or leave them alone, but these are the things that we strive for when it comes to database. So if you have a system, if you have if you're using a database right now and you don't have this information in there, I would recommend kind of assessing that, taking a look. If you're switching databases from one to another, or one CRM to another CRM, and you do an export, I do encourage you to look at that information before we just import it into the next one. Because if we just import everything in, but we don't know how to attack them, then we don't really have a good, you're not going to get the best results that you can get. So just kind of circling back on this, again, these are kind of your default fields: first name, last name, email, phone, category, or, bucket or type, whatever you want to call them, your lead source, who referred them, birth date and anniversary, and if you have multiple people in your business, who's responsible for that particular contact. Those are really the bare minimums. Of course, there's more. If we go into, for instance, our CRM that we use, there are so many fields. I can track their company, their address information, multiple addresses. I can, keep track of like their actual deal, what their specifics were for whatever they bought, or in my case, in real estate, what my commission was, all of that stuff. So there's so much information in here we can fill out, but you could really drive yourself crazy trying to fill out every field and do that. And that is an instinct that a lot of us will have if we like data and we like to have things filled out and complete. Sometimes it's just an OCD thing where we just don't like to have empty fields and we want to get them. You can spend so much time doing that, but if you don't have them tagged the right way, or you don't have an idea of who they are or how you're going to touch them, then all that information really is not valuable to you. So look at your data a little bit differently now. Instead of just having contacts and who you can call if you need to call them, look at it a little bit closer and kind of how you would communicate with them. Use that as your metric, or your kind of guideline on what information you need to have in the system. If you're not the birthday type of person, then don't worry about birthdays. You can spend your time on Facebook trying to search everybody's birthday if you're not actually going to send them out birthday cards or send them a text message on their birthday or something like that, right? Focus on the things that are important in your business. Make sure that it's set up to where you can automate things appropriately. Again, even just having the first name and last name separate instead of just a name field, that alone. Even with address, if I have an address and I'm collecting everybody's addresses because I'm doing mailers, then having a single address field versus a city, state, zip address, broken up that way, is going to change how you can communicate with your system. So if you have any questions on your CRM or your database or any spreadsheets that you're working on, happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can reach out to us at team@ballenbrands.com.